right, we are here. Welcome, everybody. We are on episode number 2 of the debut season of the new podcast on the Droppin Knowledge Network, Building While Black. We kicked things off last week with Dr. Kenya, Dr. Alex, two young ladies, two Black women that are doing their things here in Chicago in the dentistry industry. And tonight we have another amazing guest. He hails from Chicago as well. If you are in Chicago, if you are of Chicago, if you know about Chicago, if you have spent summers in Chicago, you may not know this man, but you know his product, you know his work. And he is the creator and founder of the Hyde Park Brew Fest. He is the owner of Kimbark Beverages, as well as he has his hands in other things. And so I want to welcome our guest tonight, Jonathan T. Swain, to the Building While Black podcast. How you doing, brother?
Wonderful, man. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. So this is great. We got an opportunity to chat a little bit before we went live here, but this is our first time connecting. And so already knew you was 10,000 because you are a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And
absolutely.
So I know you're a thorough brother, and you've been doing some really good things for quite some time, man. And so today we're going to kind of dig into the businessman, Jonathan T. Swain, and fellow entrepreneurs and other folks tapping in, I'm sure, have a number of nuggets that they're going to be able to pull from today's conversation, but kind of talk about where it all began. Obviously, you have entrepreneurship running through your blood. Is that something, did you have a lot of those influences as you grew up in the Hyde Park area, or when did that bug catch you?
Well, it actually started in my home. And my dad was an entrepreneur. You know, I'm going to say something that a friend of mine hit me to a while ago, and I didn't really understand what he meant until recently. But I understand what a great privilege it is. But, you know, in all of my life, in my time being alive, I'm the youngest of 4. I've never seen my father work a job. I've never seen my father work for anyone else other than himself. And so for me, entrepreneurship really started just waking up every day, watching him go to work, go through the ups and downs. We had some ups, he's had some downs, and being able to manage those and still be able to take care of his family and the like. So the roots start with him and my mother too. I don't want to leave her out because, you know, she did work in the business and she did stuff for the business. And she had to ride the ups and downs too. So it really, it's something I was born into by the virtue of the time that I was born.
Okay. And so you went away to college. So when you went to college, did you still kind of have that vision that I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my education, but I know ultimately I'm going to end up owning my own business? Or did you for a while kind of go more of the traditional route of I'm going to go find a job, professional career, and go that direction?
Yeah. So that's part of the downside of seeing your father never work a job. You never think you had to get one. Right. So I went to school. I didn't really have a game plan for my life. While everybody else was doing on-campus recruiting and looking for different jobs, I'm thinking, well, I'll figure something out because that's what we do. We figure something out, right? But that led me to go to law school, to go get a law degree at Northwestern. And, I really wasn't thinking about getting into business. I really thought I was going to be a practicing attorney till I got to school and realized I do not want to practice law. We finished, but wanted to go do something else. And so the business bug really didn't bite me until some many years later, after I was working in Auburn Gresham for Saints of Abide Church, and really realizing that, I could have a double bottom line. I could do well for myself, but also do good in the community by creating jobs. So that's really where the business bug really bit me and had me, jump square in.
Was there anything in particular that did it during that time frame that, you saw it, you started to think about it, but was there an event that took place? You sometimes hear people talk about, hey, I was fired or this. Was there an event that took place or just kind of a gradual thing for you?
No, it was a gradual thing. So when I went away to college, when I went to Duke, I majored in economics and African-American studies. And so I really saw a cross-section thinking about Black economics that was being woven together for me that I really didn't understand as I was taking economics courses and then also taking Black studies courses. And so, you fast forward, I'm in this Black business culture growing up, knowing because of my father, knowing a lot of the people, the icons of Black business in Chicago, being familiar, being, around them or as a kid or knowing them. So that's kind of weaving together. And then, I did a lot of work, was a member of Saints and Bonnet Church for a long time, did a lot of work with Father Flager in the community. And, he used to always talk about what the community needs jobs. And I saw that firsthand talking to brothers on the street, trying to provide opportunities. But then I went to business school too. So I went to business school at University of Chicago. And, I got there and I learned a lot about business.
Yep.
But I think there was this one moment, I think, I don't know all the details, but I have a vague recollection of a time when Father Mike was out there talking about how we need jobs, and a light bulb just went off after I finished business school. Well, businesses create jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. You can yell at government all you want, but the businesses are the ones that create it. And so I think that's when the light bulb went off to say, hey, look, let me see if I can find a business to run. And at the time, my sister didn't want to continue in the business. She had it before me. And I bought it from her. That's a key word. I bought it from her. I didn't step into it. I bought it. Right. Got a bank loan and bought it from her, and walked into business then. So.
Got it. Okay. And so as an entrepreneur, how long were you in that business before the creation of the Hyde Park Brew Fest kind of came about?
So it'll be 13 years. I've owned Kimbark come this June. And this had everything gone on. This would have been the 8th Hyde Park Brew Fest. But I was in and around the festival business probably 3 years before that. So probably a couple years after starting owning Kimbark that I started getting in, exploring with the festival space. And it grew into, because a lot of people think the Brewfest just kind of started organically. Okay, we're going to start it. But no, I've been working in that space for a number of years before, trying to learn the business before I stepped out to start the Brewfest. Got it.
So you answered my question. So you were very intentional about learning that versus more of a just kind of falling into it.
No, I fell into it, but once you're in it, you got to swim. And what that means, you got to really understand some stuff. So here's the story. Okay. You flash back 10 years ago, craft beer was really on the upswing. Everybody wanted to taste craft beer. And I said to myself, I said, why can't we do a craft beer tasting on the South Side? Because I was trying to drive business back to Kimbark by doing a craft beer fest. That was kind of the idea, and doing really a tasting. At the same time, I get somebody walks in my store from the Southeast Chicago Commission, which is a nonprofit that was funded by the University of Chicago. They come in and say, hey, we're about to do festivals in the neighborhood, and we're going to do an Oktoberfest. And we want you to pour beer at our first festival. That's back when, for those that are in Hyde Park, that when Roy Ayers and War, those festivals that were on 53rd Street, and so I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I said, if I'm going to try to do an Oktoberfest and the University of Chicago saying they want to do it, I better be smart and go do what they want me to do and pour beer. Okay. So I started pouring the beer, and then that's kind of where everything started to roll. So learned how to pour beer. First festival, didn't know what I was doing at all, in a horrible, horrible way, but we didn't lose our shirt.
Right.
But again, to the point, you're in it now, you start to swim. So I asked my Heineken rep, so how many barrels of beer? He asked me how many barrels of beer we did at the festival. I said like 3 or 4, whatever it was. I said, how many do y'all do at Pitchfork? Because Heineken had Pitchfork at the time. He said, 1,400.
Wow.
And so I had already done the math of what the economics on a barrel of beer being sold was.
Right.
And ultimately, quickly doing that math, they did about $1.2 million in beer at a Pitchfork festival, roughly. That's when I started saying, oh, wait a second, there's something here. let's get into this and see what we can do.
Got it. So at the was there at any point you thought, hey, here I am, this black guy on the South Side of Chicago trying to do a festival, that before you did it, that would be something that someone would think that's probably going to be too difficult to pull off. Talk about some of those early days, and did you have those types of challenges getting things kind of going and up and running?
Yeah. So, first of all, I had models that preceded me, okay, on the South Side, because you had the African Fest that's been around forever. At the time, you had the African Caribbean Festival of Life that was still in Washington Park too. And then obviously you have, the granddaddy, the Chosen Few Picnic, right? Which is a different kind of festival, but a festival nonetheless. So it wasn't like I was trying to walk into some uncharted territory. I think in many ways, what was uncharted was the fact that it was going to be a street fest, right? And truthfully, I started doing some craft beer samplings with another company. And what a lot of people don't know is the summers before we started the Hyde Park Brew Fest, I was actually working with another company running their craft beer samplings for their other festivals.
Okay.
And I got the opportunity to shadow a guy who does all the festivals on Northside and watch his business from the inside. I got to talk to people on every single level to understand how to put a budget together, how to do all these things. And so I was able to take that and bring now I have the legacy of what's going on the South Side. I can add that with the knowledge I'm getting from this guy that does festivals all over the North Side and does some on the South Side too. I get to take that, add to it, and then so starting out, I was probably on a solid enough base where I felt comfortable getting started.
Got it. So we kind of talked about your background, your education, a festival like you run today, and obviously I'm sure it's continued to grow over the years. Mm-hmm. But it's quite a task, right? I've done some concerts myself, and I remember just feeling like I was going to pull my hair out because you're running a million different directions. You're doing something on an even much larger scale. Sometimes people go into entrepreneurship and things like that. Would you say that your background, your education, your understanding of business, those things were absolute benefits to you in building this festival, or could someone with just the passion, the idea, their willingness to learn, do you think they could come in and do something as successful and as major as what you've been able to put together?
Well, I'm always going to believe anybody can do what they put their mind to, right? So I'm not going to say that I have some kind of, I'm a wonderkin that understands how to do this different than anyone else. I think part of what the key element was knowing what I do well and knowing what I don't do well. Okay, so I'm pretty good at logistics. I do that pretty well. I'm very pretty good at the political side of things, both dealing with the city of Chicago, but also just dealing with the local politics of different things, right? So that I did fairly well because that's a key element of these outdoor events. It's a political side of stuff, right? I know I was good in relationship building, and I know a lot of people who I could talk to about doing different things, and I had people who I could ask questions of to help me out, right? But I knew what I also was not good at. And what I was not good at is focusing on detail. I'm not a detail-oriented guy. I'm not meticulous. So I had to bring some people on, including my sister, to help with the details of certain things. And as we've grown, I had to get deeper in that so that we could grow, okay? I had to have people manage their particular things. But I will say this, where I really learned this lesson is, I'm not a business owner. I told you what I do well. I'm not a cultural amplifier, right? What do I mean by that? There are certain things that certain people post on their Facebook or Instagram, and people are like, I'm doing it, right? People that look at it through a what I'll call a cultural lens, okay? That's where my relationship with Dave Jeff and Diego Ross starts, okay? Because I realized I knew what I did well, but I needed someone that who understood the community in a different way to help build this together, right? And so, with Dave and Diego, we started together on it, and then Dave's continued with me on it. But without them and without Dave in most recent years, the fest is not what it is, and that's just straight up because he understands the culture in a way that I just don't. He has connection to the culture in the way that I don't. And so we were able to come together as a team, bringing the best of what he brings, the best of what I bring, to be able to amplify this into what it is. I mean, it's his relationships to get some of the DJs, right? It's his relationships that are able to work out some things with some certain sponsorships. I bring a lot to the table. He brings a lot to the table. When we come together, that's what amplifies it to where it is today.
That's dope. You talk about something that probably every entrepreneur needs to be able to do, right? You talked about kind of that, that strengths and weaknesses or areas of improvement or things that you don't do well. Did you know that early on about yourself, or is that something you kind of as you got into business, you just learned that these are things that I miss, and this is where I need to plug other people in?
Yeah, I didn't know that early on. I was hard-headed and thought I could do everything, right? I said, look, how hard could this be? We can figure it out. I'm a figure it out kind of guy, right? We can figure it out. And honestly, probably wasn't a very good manager of everything. In fact, I've been told I was a huge micromanager, and got to a point where people didn't want to make decisions without checking with me, and that's no way to run an organization. Okay. Thankfully, my wife was getting a PhD, now has a PhD in organizational psychology. So she gave me a lot of insight in terms of how I need to change my leadership style and leadership skills to be able to lead something like this.
Right.
My sisters helped me out a lot. And what really transformed me was I happened to run across a guy working in another festival with a guy who was doing that same thing. Everything had to run through him. And I asked my sister, I said, is that me? And she said, yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to be that guy anymore. Because I saw the difficulty in working with him because everything had to go through him.
Right.
And that was the moment I said, no, I have to learn. I have to do some things differently. I have to learn how to build team. I have to learn how to empower team. I had to learn how to let people run in the way they need to run. Okay. With proper oversight, but not directing them on every single step.
Yes, you talked about that, and that's that can be a difficult thing. Was there anything because in my last podcast, right, I asked the young ladies who are both dentists, right, and they talked about one of the most difficult things were their employees, right, and so people that they work with, right, in terms of just keeping them inspired, et cetera, to get better in those areas. Did you have to do any kind of outside work, or was it more of that experience of seeing what it looked like outside of that? When you had that experience, they kind of help you to make the changes necessary to be a better owner, operator, manager, et cetera.
Yeah. So it really was a lot of introspection work and asking the question about, when I keep getting the same result, the common thing is you, right?
Right.
You keep seeing the same thing. The common thing is you. I'll never forget a story I tell often. One day I came in the store and I was frustrated about some stuff that was going on. And, my wife, again, getting her PhD, I'm frustrated, exploding on my frustrations. And I'll never forget it. She was in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, and she looked at me as I was just venting. And she very softly said, the problem is you, right? I said, what? She said, your leadership creates what you have. If you want a different result, change your leadership. And that was a spark in me that said, all right, well, if that's the case, and I need to look internally first to figure out what are my own personal issues that I need to work through so that I can lead a team more effectively, and it's been an evolution, right? Even how I think about what my value system is relative to business. For a long time, the whole idea was you try to keep wages as low as possible. That's the American capitalistic system, right?
Sure.
That was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. And before my father passed, he passed last year, we talked about it. He's like, that's the model I learned, and it was the wrong model. If you really want to see your business grow, you got to invest in people because they're your most important asset that you don't see sitting on the balance sheet. So, right. So it's those kind of evolution, man, and really kind of looking at my value system and saying, look, well, some of the things I thought I valued, maybe I don't value them, and maybe I need to change so that the business can actually grow.
Right. So talk about, a lot of people come up with ideas. They have events, they have things that they want to do, and everybody wants to pull in sponsorship, right? And they want to pull in dollars, et cetera. You've been very successful at that. Kind of talk about what's the pitch that you take in when you're pitching the Hyde Park Brew Fest to bring sponsors on board?
Well, thanks for that credit. I think we've been moderately successful. In fact, what we were going to do last year was to change the name from the Hyde Park Brew Fest to the Hyde Park Summer Fest to get more sponsorship, because the name, the Hyde Park Brew Fest, kept a lot of sponsors who wanted to give us money away because their legal team said we cannot be associated with something with the brew in this name. Even though the fest will not change in any way, because brew's in the name, the law departments wouldn't sign off on it. So, so in that way, we've been moderately successful. But the pitch is this, I I believe when you're doing something, you gotta, in your first year, here's my theory. Your first year, you got to prove the concept yourself. That means you're going to probably have to pay for it. You don't look to get a sponsor to underwrite something that has not proven.
Right.
You wouldn't invest in something not proven. Don't expect them to invest in something not proven. Right.
Right.
So, what the first thing we did, I spent money on getting a videographer to video the first year so that I had something to sell. Sure. And so the pitch really is not a pitch. It's really trying to solve and fulfill a need for them. What are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to get to the AFAM community. You're trying to get to the Southside community, mixed community, well, however you want to describe it. And then from there, you're pitching your product so that you're trying to fulfill and solve their need, right? If you're trying to I always believe this way. In business, if you're not looking to fulfill a need or solve a problem, you're just involved in a hobby. What business is created to fix needs and to solve problems. And so you got to have to identify what is the problem that whatever that event, whatever it is trying to solve. For example, I don't know that the South Side of Chicago is a big place for bluegrass music.
Right.
So you try to do a bluegrass concert, you might not get much sponsorship because you're not fulfilling the need. Versus doing that in Kentucky, where there probably is a huge need for that. That's kind of the thought behind making those pitches and telling the story.
Got you. So you talked about kind of doing kind of almost a kind of an apprenticeship right before you got into the business of doing this and learning lessons. Kind of, I'm sure that there's many things, but one that kind of sticks out to you. What's one thing that you really just did not see prior to getting into this that once you got into it, you saw? And just kind of talk us through what was it and how did you, I'm assuming that you solved it at some point. Kind of talk through that a little bit.
Yeah. So what I did not know before I got in this is that the most important people are the cleanup people. Okay. And the most important hour or most important day of an event is first day after, in my particular event, is the first day after it ends. Okay. Because your ability to do an outdoor event or a festival is correlated to how you left the place that you did it in. Okay. If you leave it a mess, it's going to be harder for you to do it again next year. The neighbors are going to be upset at you. The politicians are going to be upset at you. The police are going to be upset at you. That is probably the most important day. So like when we do a festival, we close the festival, shut it down. I'm back outside at 4:00 in the morning on the street, walking up with the cleanup people, walking with the Hyde Park Chamber folks saying, have we put this back right? And I made mistakes there too, but have we put this back right so that we can do it again, right? And shout out to Juan Teague. She put together a team last year to put it together, and she was right out there with me 4:00 in the morning. her and Terry were out there making sure the street was put back right, and so we appreciate that. So that's one of the biggest lessons that I had not seen before. That really opened my eyes.
Got it. Yeah. Shout out to Juan. Shout out to Diego. Shout out to Dave as well. So everybody checking in right now, make sure that you follow us on all our platforms, Droppin Knowledge Network on Facebook, Droppin Knowledge Network on Instagram. You can search Droppin Knowledge Podcast on YouTube. Make sure that you're tapping in. Make sure that you're sharing this with other folks. This is really good information, insight. You don't get this a lot. Again, if you are from Chicago, around Chicago, you've heard about the Hyde Park Brew Fest. And as we kind of talk, about the Brewfest, for those folks that may not know about the Hyde Park Brew Fest, we've mentioned it a number of times. Tell us what it is. Tell us what it is, what the vision is for someone who's never heard of it before, but Chicago's on their list to visit during the summer. Yeah,
so it's an event that I would say this way. Excuse me. It's an event that articulates a new narrative for Chicago. That's really what it is. It's in the first weekend of June, so it kicks off the summer, weekend after Memorial Day. A 2-day event that takes over. Well, historically, it's taken over about 6-7 blocks in Hyde Park on 53rd Street, which is the main drag near where the University of Chicago is. And it's craft beer sampling. It's I think, as Dave says, it's craft beer, good food, and great people. That's really what it is. It's like the first time in the year where you get to see people you haven't seen. It feels like a reunion in some ways. We have great music, great DJs. It's typically been house on Saturday, and house on Sunday, and hip hop on Friday. We bring DJs from around the world to come and spin. And it's just a great time for folks for one. It's a mixed crowd, especially during the day of the craft beer sampling. It's a very mixed crowd. Yeah, young folks out there, but it articulates a narrative of thousands of Black people in the South Side of Chicago. No issues, no problems, all love. And that's really what it's about. So if you want to, we talk about the narrative of Chicago, how bad it is, and especially now with carjackings and all that stuff. Sure. But if you really want to see a real sense as to what the best of Chicago is, I think it represents, and not to the exclusion of anyone else that does that. There are a lot of other events that do it. But for me, it's really articulates a woo-saw moment for Black Chicago, and you get to see the real best of Black Chicago and best of Chicago, really, in the event.
So, Jonathan, talk about that a little bit, and we're going to get back into the business, but just from a social and cultural element, to the best of your ability, articulate how do you think that's happened, right? You're absolutely dead on. There's so many people you haven't seen, from grade school, from grammar school, all different types of people, but it is always just all love, and that's in the middle of the South Side. And so, talk about how you've been. Has there been anything strategically that you feel that you've done to try to make sure that you can never control it completely, but make sure that environment stays that way? Has it just been, God having his hand over things? Kind of just talk about how you think you've been able to pull that off successfully.
Well, look, man, the first strategy, man, always starts with prayer.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And Dave and I, we get together and we pray about the fest. We pray every day before the fest starts, right? That God gets the glory, right? And we put it in his hands. So there is a strategy, and that is the strategy, right? I mean, even in the midst of the storm that happened 2 years ago, which was a lot, right? Yeah. We trust God to make sure it's right? So that's first and foremost. But there is some strategy behind it. First of all, you got to make sure you got good security that understands the community, right? Because sometimes you can have not a mesh when you have certain security that doesn't understand the community, right? Understand when to make moves, when not to make moves. So we had a great security team. James Polk, who just passed away last year, God rest his soul. He was our leader, and he did a great job with that. Secondly, it's about how you market your acts. We want to make sure that our acts are leaning towards a more mature crowd. Okay. And that's how we started. So that's why, we do house music on Sundays, and though all people love house music, it leans towards a bit more of a mature crowd. Right. When you talk about the hip hop that we do, the hip hop leans maybe skews a little bit older, right? The kind of golden era hip hop, our age kind of thing. Right. So it leans a little bit older. So those are some of the strategic points that we do to do that. But I'll tell you this. I mean, in many ways, it's the crowd that comes and their appreciation for the event that polices the event itself. I mean, I can tell you stories of when there was one incident, guy was trying to do something, get in something. 5, 6 dudes ran up on him and said, dude, we don't do this here. This is not what happens. Okay. You can take that elsewhere. I understand you're mad. Go elsewhere. We don't do this.
Right.
I had another situation with some younger kids that were trying to buy some alcohol underage. And my sister was dealing with them, and they was trying to get all, whatever. Right. And some guys from just having to be standing and said, look, y'all not going to mess this up for us. Okay. That's not how this is going to work. And so you see this kind of self-policing kind of thing that you want. And policing probably a bad word for it, but this kind of oversight trying to make sure that the environment is what it is. So I think it all blends together, right? All these different pieces, not being out too late, being very clear about, what our objectives are. I think it all plays together, man.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So talk about how many people are making this happen? If you had to put kind of an idea of total staff to pull this event off, what sort of scale are we talking about?
that work for me directly.
That just maybe touch it. If you're talking about me,
if you're talking about touch it,
yeah.
Oh man, you're upwards in 200, 250.
Wow.
When you look at, the stage folks, sound folks, cleanup crew, the beer folks, I mean, yeah, probably about 200, 250 in terms of people.
A couple hundred. So how did you set up the management of this event? Kind of talk about the management piece of it, to be able to touch that many people in such a short period of time and pull it off successfully year after year.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, I mean, you got the contractors that you hire. You got to hire good contractors, right? So what I mean by good contractors is, Ernie Green is our sound guy. He's one of the best in the business.
Yep.
You want to make sure you got good people that are working on their particular element and their particular piece of it. You want to make sure that you wherever you can outsource different things to manage the different pieces when you can afford to do that. As we grew, what happened was we started having, as we learned lessons, we had to start having particular people over the particular departments. So we have one person that's over vendors, load in and load out, and they put a crew together that they work with so that we can manage the load in and load out. We have, one crew that's in charge of the bar setups and making sure, and managers in every single one of the bars to make sure they're taken care of. We have a prep crew that starts with all the prep and all, up for hours on end, getting the event set up. Then you have the tear down crew that's trying to tear it down. We work with the Dovetail Project, my guy Sheldon Smith. We've hired guys from out of his program, young fathers learning how to be better about being fathers. Hired them out of his program to help us with the tear down, right? Because you need some young, energized folks to tear down if you've been working all that time. So I think it's about really just trying to put different compartments and different departments together with people who understand what they need to do and having open lines of communication and then checking in on a regular basis, right?
Right.
Like the Hyde Park Chamber, they are our partner. While it's good, he's good about watching the details and making sure we have the details. And so during the event, we check in every hour. Every hour we have a meeting. What are we seeing? What are we knowing? What's going on? So we can make adjustments on the fly. And so that's how we pretty much do that.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing execution. So you talked about the name change, right? You talked about, Hyde Park Summerfest, Brewfest. I'm sure, like any entrepreneur, year to year, you're thinking about changes, tweaks, et cetera. And again, unfortunately, we didn't get to do it in 2020, but when the Hyde Park Summerfest hits again, what are those things that we can expect? What tweaks have you made? What have you been kind of cooking up in the kitchen?
Well, COVID is an interesting new ingredient to these events, right?
Right.
I mean, now, truthfully, man, I look at some of the pictures through a COVID mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, that was a little too close for comfort, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously we're going to have to think about spacing. I mean, we haven't made any hard decisions, but we got to think about spacing. We got to think about, how, do we need more space for people to spread out? Because is spreading out and being socially distant something that's going to be a part of our culture for a while? I mean, right? Again, there are people out here who are not socially distancing right now, right? But there are people out here that are still like, look, I'm not trying to be around people like that. So I think that's one piece of it. Two, we have to look at the safety and security. The Chicago of 3 years ago. Yeah. There's a different Chicago right now.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
In a lot of ways, it's a different Chicago right now. And so we got to be thoughtful about what that really means and making sure we protect everybody that's there and making sure we have maybe a bit more line of sight on who's coming in, who's coming out. Right. Just to keep everybody safe. Yeah. Three, man, with climate change, the weather is unpredictable.
Right.
And in this business, there's two big risks: weather and incidents.
Yeah.
Okay? So the question becomes, how do I mitigate the risk? Because I can't control the weather, for sure. Right. How do we mitigate risk? Because at the end of the day, you got to think about all the risks that are involved. So those are the things that we're thinking about. do we have to move the venue to someplace else? And if we did that, what would it look like?
Yeah.
Do we have to change now? And if we did that, we have to change what the music kind of looks like in terms of providing more live artists than we do DJs.
Right.
So there are a lot of different pieces that we're thinking about how we put it together and that we're working on, because COVID is just,
it's a new animal, man.
It's a new animal. And truthfully, I'm not looking to lead. We are small enough that we can let other people lead, right? We can let Live Nation lead. We can let other companies lead and follow that example to see what we need to do in best practices for this post-COVID world when it comes to these events. So
sure. That's great insight. So most people, right, they see the 2 to 3 day event, etc. They have a great time. But for you, the orchestrator, when do you start to work on, let's not talk about pre-COVID, what have you. When do you start to work on this fest? How long does it take, and how much planning in terms of time goes into putting an event of that scale together?
We start working a week after the event closes. So the whole year.
It's a full year.
It's a full year. It started out being 3 months,
right?
6 months. Now it's a whole year, honestly. Because you got to think about all the different pieces that you got to line up. Talent, you got to book out a year in advance, right? Certain equipment and certain things you got to book out a year in advance. You got to start navigating new relationships if you need to get rid of vendors, right? And you got to start navigating those things. How are you going to deal with your vendors going forward? You got to start thinking about what the calendar looks like to know what you're going up against, and seeing how that's going to kind of play things out, making certain reservations. So yeah, we're starting to plan it real hard, 12 months out. And then we're really hard. We shift up 9 months, and the 6 months in is where we're really going really strong to really getting it done. And then you think about, up to the month before, it's, 7 days a week, the month before.
Right. Got it. So in terms of I've always been one, a participant and enjoyer of the Hyde Park Brew Fest, but from a business perspective and bottom line perspective, and we don't have to get into details, but I'm assuming a healthy and growing business, and yeah. So let's do that first. Healthy and growing business.
It's a healthy business. It's a growing business for sure, but the risk is increasing. As well. And so, the biggest challenge you have to the business side is the risk, especially when it comes to things like weather. I mean, if you think about 2 years ago, 19, when that first storm came through, I mean, we were doing very well. Storm comes through. Thank God the next day was, sunny and 60 degrees, and we were able to get back to where we needed to be.
Right.
But that's the nature of this kind of beast. And so the question becomes, what changes do you have to make to make sure you get rid of some of that risk? And so those are the things we're thinking about. But yeah, it's growing. But I'll say this: as it grows, your expenses grow, right? And we saw this and with the Silver Room Block Party, who we partner with them on their bars, Eric Williams. As you grow and you get more on the city's radar, there are more costs that are going to come with it, right? You're going to have to pay for traffic management aids, and they're not cheap. They're $16, $17 an hour, and the city tells you exactly how many you need to have, right? Wow. Then the fire department says, well, you got to have certain kind of ambulances, one here and one there, and they're $200 an hour, right? For however many hours you have to have them out there. So as it grows, expenses grow too.
Sure. Had there been any point since you've been doing this, maybe something happened, or just the size of it and the growth of it has made you potentially think that, this is cool, this is great, I love it, and everybody else loves it, but this is taking a toll on me. Has that ever hit you, or not a thought?
So any good business person is going to give a hard look to their business every year and make a determination whether they need to go forward. Okay. If you're not doing that, I'd encourage you to do that. A hard, honest look, right? And so we look every year and say, all right, do we need to do this again next year? Okay, because is the reward and the versus the risk. Does it make sense?
Right.
And so when you get it's not, so I don't think for me it's a question of, and then there's a question of too, is the product that you're offering, do people still want it? And what kind of lifespan does it have? Right. Those are also other questions that you got to ask. Right. So yeah, I think about it. We think about it. We have discussions about it all the time. Like, hey, me and my wife in particular, like, hey, is this something we want to do? Is this something we want to, be a part of next year? And we make that decision every year. And we're making that decision. Like we made the decision last year. Like, nope, it's not it. This year, we'll probably see you in 22. Decision hadn't been fully made yet because we're still watching what's going on, but we'll probably see you in 22.
I got you. So let's bag back before COVID, and we're getting ready to wrap here. But you're an entrepreneur, right? So we were talking about the Hyde Park Brew Fest. That's what I wanted to spend majority of the time talking about, just because I'm such a huge fan, and it's provided me so much joy, no doubt. But you also own Kimbark. Right? You also have a non-for-profit. How do you, as an entrepreneur with multiple businesses that all need your attention, how do you split your time, or how do you carve up your time?
Well, I spend most of my time thinking about staff, very honestly, because when you become a leader of organization, I just heard this the other day. When you become a leader of an organization, your job is to lead people as they lead the work, right? So my job is thinking about all the people on my team, how are they doing? How are they doing mentally, physically? How are they doing with the work? That's kind of what I'm focused on, right? And then I'm also focused on the high level strategic issues.
Yeah.
So beyond those two, you got to put markers or metrics in place to know when you're doing well, when you're not doing well, and then when you need to make change. And so in all those particular ventures, be it, Link Unlimited Scholars, which is a nonprofit that I run, it's been around 50 years, and I've kind of been working to turn it around. You look at all those metrics and you make decisions working with your people, right? And then you got to be real honest. And I have had to learn this. You got to be real honest. If somebody's not working out, you got to make changes. You got to make switches, right? Otherwise, that's going to come back on you, right? Those are probably the things that have helped me the most in managing all the different things that I do. You got to have great people. If you don't have great people, in particular a solid number two, right? You're not going to be able to manage beyond your hand.
Right. So give us one nugget. So for you, what do you think your best entrepreneurial trait or characteristic is that essentially shows itself as a positive in any venture that you touch?
I think if I had an innate gift or innate trait or what I'm good at, I think strategy is it.
Okay.
Strategy is probably why I get kind of my juices really flowing and going. There are other people out here that can see opportunities better than I can. Okay. I talk about vision. I had the vision for the fest. Dave helped stretch that vision. He's helped me stretch it to see it. Okay. But strategy is probably the thing that where I really kind of get into it, right? What is your business strategy? What are your values? What is your culture? What is your mission? What is your purpose? Putting all those things together to kind of figure out how are you going to move the ball from, one side of the fence to the other side of the fence. That's what I enjoy the most, coming up with strategy. I'd also say that I really like, I like dealing with things at a, I like fixing stuff.
Okay.
Right. Imagine we were talking about real estate earlier, right?
Yep.
The most important, other than the foundation, the most important thing you do is lay the first two or three courses of brick on a building, right? Because if they're not lined up perfectly, your building could be one way left or one way right. So I like focusing on those things, making sure that systems are in place, right? You know, are your accounting systems right? Are your marketing feedback loops right? I like that kind of stuff. And that's where I like to spend my time. There are other people that are a lot better in the promotion and all that kind of stuff, like I said before. But I like strategy. I like building the systems so that they can run on their own. And that's been really fun for me.
Good. So as a leader, as a manager of people, as a motivator of people, any books that you would refer to, any budding entrepreneur that just go for you and you think they provide such great value for anybody looking to build a business?
Oh man, see, so now you done got me into something, because your COVID thing was doing the podcast.
Right.
I've always been an avid reader, but during COVID, it's been books upon books upon books upon books, right? So there are a number of books that I recommend. First book I recommend is The E-Myth Revisited. I forget the guy that wrote it, but The E-Myth is a book that talks about 3 different types of players: entrepreneurs, managers, and technicians. And you have to understand your role and understand whether you're really a technician just trying to be an entrepreneur because you don't want a boss, but you're still a technician. Okay. Great in terms of laying those things out. That's one. Another book that I would read, Good to Great, Jim Collins, old standby, that talks about the hedgehog concept, the intersection between what you're passionate about, what you can be the best in the world at, and what you can make money from. That's the place where you need to focus. I'll recommend that one. I recommend a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant that talks about givers and takers, and people would think that takers are the most successful people, but really it's givers that are the most successful people. I recommend that one. I recommend a book called Starts with Why by Simon Sinek. Okay, that true leaders are always about building things from the inside out, and the great ones always start with the question why, not how or what, but why. That's another one that I would recommend. So, I'm also reading other stuff by Simon Sinek and Adam Grant right now, but those are probably the ones that here's one. It's called BE 2.0. It started as Beyond Entrepreneurship. That was Jim Collins' first book. Read that book too. It helps you really understand what are the things that are required to build enduring companies. Those are the ones that I probably would. Can you tell I like to read books? Those are the ones that I would jump into on this entrepreneurial journey.
Brother, man, this has been amazing. Episode 2, I'm fired up. This was the vision of the podcast, brother. So I appreciate you coming with it. So much dropped in our 49 minutes that we've spent together. As I told you, I knew who you were. I've met you in passing before, but shout out to my man Jay Green, who finally connected the dots. So we was
Jay Grilla, absolutely,
Grilla, to make this happen. And it's great to meet you. Understanding that you're a brother of mine as well through Kappa Alpha Psi, even better.
Absolutely,
and, yo, and hopefully we can get back to this Hyde Park Summerfest so that you can give me a night for classic hip hop lives, but we'll talk about that. So
no doubt, let's talk about that. No, I like that. Okay, let's talk about that.
Indeed, brother. So thanks again for everybody that continues to support the Droppin Knowledge Network. Continue to share it. This podcast, of course, I am biased, but this brother just gave us information that you can go back, watch over and over again, take apart. You got books to read. You're looking at a business and something that is massive in Chicago. It's a staple of Chicago. And you're talking and listening to the founder of it. And you've gone inside to see what it took, the steps that he took, how he overcame challenges. And so invaluable. And you got it for the free 99. All you have to do is hit any of our sites. You're able to get this information. So Jonathan, once again, good brother, I appreciate you. And as always, I appreciate all of the supporters of the Droppin Knowledge Network and our newest show, Building While Black. Peace.